She kept defending the Prophet until she was wounded and she couldn't do that anymore. You know, that's something. I mean, you know, a woman with a sword, you know, mashallah, it's quite strong. Or Sophia, the uncle. Did I just say uncle? Yes, the aunt of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sophia bint Abd al-Muttalib, so obviously in the same bloodline as Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. So you'd imagine she's not a doormat. You know, she has this, comes from this line of very brave and valorous people. It said that at the Battle of Khandaq, there was an area where the women were taking refuge, and someone was coming to attack it. And there was a man who was unable to defend them for various reasons. So what does she do? She picks up a tent pole and basically bashes the guy. And again, I don't mean to be sounding like I'm trying to glorify warfare, but I'm just saying, you know, I mean, you know, she did her job. And so, you know, these are some cases of women taking a notable role in some of the battles of Islam, which of course, incidentally, were not part of some sort of jihad effort to kill non-Muslims or something, but they were essentially defensive battles to protect the interests of the Muslim community. Depending on the exact circumstances, varying depending on which battle it was. And so I think this is something we should also mention in our portrayal of women during the time of the Holy Prophet. But of course, there's one woman in particular who I don't think could be omitted from a discussion of women at the time of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, and that of course is Hazrat Fatima Zahra, salamullahi alayha. And of course, I understand the consideration not to show her in a movie, out of respect. However, it is good to at least portray some of the impact she had on the community. And of course, if we want to speak about her, there's many, many different angles that we could do it. I'm just going to pick one and say one of the impacts I think is particularly important to portray is essentially her commitment, you know, both individually and her family's commitment to community service, to sacrificing for serving the Ummah. Because this was something, of course, it was a belief or a, you know, sort of a worldview, you know, that she lived on. Her father, of course, the Holy Prophet, that was what he did. He was appointed as the Prophet to guide mankind, so everything was for service. Also, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, you know, he also was always sacrificing for the Ummah. So it was very much a shared value. But one of the things I think that's particularly valuable to look at, we look at her, is that, you know, even before she got married, when she was quite young, you know, she was serving the Prophet and serving the community in various ways. Many times when we as women, we think about marriage, we sort of think about marriage as something that sort of ends our relationship with the community. And this is cross-cultural, by the way. I'd say we have it in the West too. And the idea is, well, you know, before you're married, you have your life. Once you get married, you know, it's just kind of like your focus is inside these walls and your life sort of ends. Now, maybe some of you don't think it like that, I don't know, but this way of thinking was very prevalent in my generation. And I know some people have it. And yet, when we look at her life, alayha salam, we find that when she got married, this only amplified her ability to serve the community, because it wasn't just her doing it by herself, or with her father, of course, but it was something they did as a household. And there's many cases that you could speak of this. I mean, for example, we all know Surah Dahr, when they're giving away their food. And obviously she's not taking the food from her children. They're all voluntarily giving their food to people so they don't eat for 3 days. Or, you know, the famous saying, you know, first the neighbor, then the household, putting people above them. And you can look at her involvement in the political events. You know, after the departure of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, her concern about the future of the Ummah, or some of the narrations we have about her instructing the Ummah. There's a narration about her, you know, for example, I mean, physically passing on, or holding some ahadith from the Holy Prophet, emphasizing the importance of passing them on, and so forth. So, you know, in a sense, very much an outward focus, seeing what she can do for the community, not necessarily just as, sort of in the individual sphere. And I think that's particularly relevant in a group like this, because definitely nowadays we're in a situation where I know women make a lot of contributions and take a very active role in a lot of Islamic organizations, such as this one, obviously, and also all of you here. Actually, I mean, this is quite common in organizations and movements of different types for women to take a strong role. But I think given that this is definitely the situation we have in this day and age, it is very valuable to look back to the life of Hazrat Fatima Zahra salamullahi alayha, or some of the other female companions, to see how they were very active members of the Muslim community and worked to promote the good of the religion, the propagation of the religion, and the interests of the religion and of humanity in general, to have a model for some of our work and inspiration for some of our work as well, inshallah. I'm sure I'm over time. Anyway, thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to the discussion section. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Sister Amina, for your very enlightening presentation, especially your brief and entertaining recap on the role of women in Islamic battles, which I found very interesting. I would now like to welcome our next speaker, Sister Shelina. Sister Shelina will be giving a talk on the war over Muslim women. Sister Shelina is the author of Love in a Headscarf, an amazing book, which I recommend you all to read. And she writes regularly for The Guardian, The National, The Times, and the ML magazine, the leading Muslim lifestyle magazine. She has her own award-winning blog at www.spirit21.co.uk, which I recommend all of you, girls and boys, to look it up and read. It's really interesting. Especially this week she wrote a blog about yoga, which I don't know if any of you have done it, but I did yoga this summer, and I could completely relate to what she said. I couldn't even get past the first 5 minutes of the session, because I couldn't do the stage where they told you to close your eyes for 5 minutes. I just got bored. So you did really well in comparison to what I did. But anyway, sorry, enough about me. Back to Sister Shelina. She's based in London. She's a graduate of New College, Oxford. Shelina was named the Times newspaper as one of the UK's most influential Muslim women. Very impressive. She has travelled with a British Foreign and Commonwealth Office globally and has hosted the annual Eid in the Square celebration. As well as being a trustee of the Windsor Fellowship, she's also a mentor with Mosaic, the Muslim Mentoring Network. So if I can now ask Sister Shelina to start her presentation.
Thank you, Shelina, for that very extensive introduction. I think Shelina has scoured the whole of the internet to find everything I've ever done since the beginning of my life. You'll be relieved to know I'm not going to talk about yoga. Perhaps afterwards over tea and coffee. First of all, thank you very much to the Athens Bay Islamic Society for their invitation to speak to you this evening, and thank you, all of you, for coming. I think the topic of women in Islam is one that comes up constantly, and it's something that we need to have some deep but also broad thought as a community about. I was also very excited to be speaking on a panel with Amina, but it also makes me nervous because although she's extremely fascinating and insightful to listen to, it's a bit of a tough act to follow. So thank you, Amina, for a really fascinating presentation. So today's title, Women in Islam, Dispelling Stereotypes. So I was putting together this presentation trying to think about what I would say, and my expectation of your expectation was that I would begin by going through all the usual stereotypes, the stereotypes of the stereotypes, if you will, that Muslim women are oppressed, that they're uneducated, that they're backwards, that they're locked at home indoors, and so on. And I guess I'm coming at this topic from a much more contemporary, media-based analysis of this topic than Amina did in her historical analysis. So that would obviously be, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes of my presentation, and then you would all expect me to go on and refute all of those terrible oppressive stereotypes and tell you that Islam brought a whole new perspective about Muslim women and the rights that they would have over 1400 years ago, and that these rights were in advance of their time, and that actually women, even in the contemporary